Good morning, Internet. I am Shashru Roche, and on this episode, I am going to read an article that I published on my Substack page on March 6th, and I'm going to follow up that reading with some commentary, hopefully keeping it short. Let's start the show off with a quick prayer. If you'll join me, please. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, so the article that we'll be commenting on today is Cultural Christianity, a YouTube algo inspiration. This article was inspired by a video episode posted on Mike Winger's YouTube channel about 6 months ago. The YouTube algo served me this Mike Winger episode today. I thought it was a timely delivery because I have been thinking about a variation of that very subject for over a year now, and wanted to think through my personal feelings and, as an extension perhaps, addition to Mike's opinion on the matter by writing about it here. In the video, Mike has eloquently articulated my very thoughts and observations on the subject, much better than I could ever hope to. He speaks briefly about politicians, cultural Christianity, and the followers of the Christian faith. His preamble to the video is intended to serve as a warning to his viewers, mostly Christians, about the two-edged sword of subscribing to cultural Christianity. He touches on the difference between these ideas and for his followers, and in a subtle, possibly indirect way, asks that they exhibit some level of discernment when it comes to their ideas about faith and politics. One of the many reasons why this subject is important to me is because I've stopped having conversations with my friends and family about politics over a year ago, which until that point was something that I really enjoyed doing with them, and we had political discussions often. However, over the last few years, I've noticed that politics have become more of a dogmatic groupthink phenomena, in which party delegates are primarily subscribed to and parrot the elementary talking points of one of the two political camps in America. One camp believes the other side is simply composed of the racist policies and ideas of redneck rural America, while the other camp believes the opposing side is largely composed of urban champagne-sipping communists. While I don't consider myself to be a deeply credentialed scholar on matters of politics or religion, more specifically the Christian faith, I do value conversations on these subjects that have a little more depth and nuance than what we are currently exposed to in the mainstream discourse. Nuanced discussions on topics such as how inflation contributes to corruption in government and the funding of never-ending wars, or how gender and sexual confusion in society might affect an already declining birth rate, and how that will impact our society in the next 50 to 100 years. Thirdly, how vacillating party-centric immigration policies will impact the voter demographic in communities across the country a generation or two from now. Fourth, how public policy is contributing to the decay in the quality of our public educational institutions and how that may impact our society and American culture a few generations from now. Fifth, the resolving door policies between elected officials and the private business sectors and special interest groups, and how these behaviors are often a conflict of interest that lead to systemic corruption in our government bureaucracies. These are just a few of the many topics I'd like to explore with friends and family or hear others discuss for public consumption and consideration. I'm baffled at how fast these dynamics can change within a family, within a community. Back to Mike's points, there are many self-identifying Christians that are not believers in the core tenets of what it means to be a follower of Christ's teachings. The path to God's kingdom is a narrow one, and simply living as a good human does not automatically grant us access to that kingdom. There are the attributes of a Christian which may be observed and mimicked by members of a community. Attributes such as kindness, love, generosity towards others, and so on. However, to be a Christian is to place Jesus and his teachings at the center of all that behavior, and understanding how and why his sacrifice was required in order for us to gain access to his Father's kingdom. The latter part of the idea of being a Christian often goes unacknowledged or even outright rejected by many self-proclaiming Christians. Simply put, we want a piece of the cake, but many of us are not interested in making the cake. Furthermore, it seems to me in most cases, we forget the core incentives that drive our modern-day elected officials. It's my opinion, and not something Mike touched on in his video. That is to say, our politicians are firstly interested in getting elected and re-elected. Secondly, they want to make money for themselves. Everything else they say or do follows these two chief desires. I feel that as a nation we have lost sight of this and fall in love with our elected officials, institutional leaders, and favorite media influencers. Politics is downstream from culture. Most politicians, the smart ones anyway, observe what the public wants to hear and see, and as a reaction to what they've observed, build their platforms on top of the ideas and sentiments which they think will be consistent with what culture demands or expects at any particular point. At this stage of our nation's maturity, it seems the culture for the most part wants the attributes of Christianity within their respective communities. They are not demanding their elected officials be students of Jesus' teachings. The positive side of that double-edged sword that Mike references in his video is that Christian culture might deliver kindness, generosity, and love for one another, the product that is possibly a seemingly healthy community on the surface during our fleshly time on earth. But the negative side of that sword is when we pass on to the afterlife. Where does our soul end after we die? Where does our soul end up after we die? God's kingdom in heaven or Satan's kingdom in hell? Most of us fail to understand that spiritual warfare is real. Satan's agents are cunning, and their designs are not on our fleshly lives for the 80 plus years on earth, if we're lucky, but rather Satan's design is for our souls in the afterlife for eternity. I don't pretend to be an expert on all matters of Christianity, because I am but a toddler in my faith, just learning to walk, and still far from the footsteps that Jesus has placed before me as the example. But I'd like to think I at least have this bit of being a Christian clearly understood. That is all. Thank you for reading. Okay, so yeah, I woke up and the YouTube algo that had that Mike Winger episode queued up as, at the very top of my screen, so I checked it out. And it resonated with me quite a bit. I mentioned in the article that I used to have nuanced, intelligent, rational conversations with friends and family about politics. But at some point, it wasn't an overnight change, but it gradually became less and less rational, more and more emotional. Friends and family members, folks would get upset, and the conversations they became less and less interesting and fun to have. And when the Trump phenomena happened in 2014, his first election, I forget what that was, 2014, 2016, when that phenomena happened, it became exaggeratedly the case that, hey, you could no longer have rational, intelligent conversations on the subjects of politics here in America anyway. And so gradually the number of people that I could have these types of conversations with shrunk more and more with each season. And I really missed that. I missed having these types of conversations at the cigar lounge with my buddies. I missed having those conversations with my cousins and siblings. And so seeing this and I'm not sure that Mike is the one that coined the term cultural Christianity, but it was new to me. And it sounded exactly like what I was experiencing in my social graph. My friends and family, they wanted the elements of Christianity, to get married, have children, a family. They wanted to contribute to nonprofit organizations, around, not necessarily around them and their communities, but different ones, be it locally. I had one friend that was sponsoring a cause in Haiti. I had another one that was sponsoring causes in South Africa and abroad. All good things, but not doing anything in their communities, not even knowing who their physical neighbors were in some cases. And so that sort of that idea or that observation was very much consistent with, you know, or an indication to me that, as Americans, we want to be in a community where the tenets and values that are manifested by Christians are reflected in that community. However, we're not acknowledging the role that Jesus Christ plays in that. In some cases, my friends do go to church religiously every Sunday. They're generous in that they support causes with not so much with their time, but with money. Um, they believed that it was wrong to steal and cheat. Um, but yet, the work that they did, in most cases, their careers had huge benefits. The pays were very generous, and those facts afforded them very comfortable lives, myself included in that, for a while anyway. And so there was not so much focus placed on uh, their professions. There was not so much focus placed on how their hearts felt about their neighbors, or there wasn't so much emphasis placed on being good to the people around you. You know, I'd often find myself engaged in conversations where we were criticizing and judging others. That group did this, they believe that, and this person does this and believe that, and so on and so on. Um, and what occurred to me over time was that a lot of times, and I'm including myself in this too, so this is not me pointing out the plank in somebody else's eye or the twig in somebody else's eye while I have the plank in my eye. This is not one of those situations because I was clearly participating in these exercises as well. And I think Mike Winger's episode kind of framed it up in exactly the way that I was actually seeing it in my life, with my family and with my friends and in my social circles. And you scale those dynamics out from a micro to the macro scale, and that's pretty much what's happening at a national level as well. It's happening in families all across the country, and it's happening between nation states. It's happening between political parties. It's happening between races, religions, all around us, on just about everything that comes on the television screen or your tablets or on any screen for that matter. And that's what this article is really about. I mean, I really miss having those kinds of conversations, those conversations that left you thinking about what you could do different and how you wanted to improve, or different ways to reinforce what you thought to be true, or have what you thought to be true thoroughly debunked by a rationed mind or rational engagement discussions between people, be they family members, friends, or between nations. So that's pretty much what I have here. And then I also mentioned a couple of nuanced discussions on topics such as, okay, so my point with including a couple of bullets is that I, when I say smart conversations, I don't mean to be condescending to other points of views, but intelligent conversations. What I mean by that is you have a discussion between two people or two groups where we're not just parroting the headlines from these articles or these shows that are being parroted at a very superficial level. Like conversations in which some element or some level of critical thinking is being exhibited. Like we've thought through the headlines and we've read the articles and we've thought through the contents of that article. Those kinds of conversations I've really missed, especially with those that are closest to me. So yeah, scanning through the article here to see if there's anything else that I wanted to point out. Yeah, so I look around at my friends and family, the ones that are close to me, and everything looks, for the most part, honky-dory on the outside. But there's zero Jesus Christ in there. There's so you don't know if their heart is the way that it needs to be in order to gain access to the kingdom of God when we leave this afterlife, and when you don't have Jesus in your life, you do things that you would not do. The fear of death. When I die, what's my legacy? What's going to happen here? What's going to happen to this person? If I get into an accident and die, what happens to my children? If both husband and wife are in the car, and how do they? What happens to them? We behave certain ways with our children when we don't have an understanding of what Jesus did and why he did what he did. We raise our children to be a certain way. It's a very high time preference. What we're doing right now, this moment, is basically, not to say that it is the most important, because biblically, my understanding is that the present is what matters. What you're doing right now, appreciating what you're doing right now with who you're doing it, or thinking about the afterlife, being in God's kingdom. Kind of looking forward to that and being a part of that heavenly space that he speaks so much about in the Bible and in the scriptures, the kingdom, just living in that space. And when you understand who Jesus truly is and why he did what he did, there's a certain inner peace that comes with that. No matter how chaotic things might be around you, there's an inner peace that understanding avails in a person, and you miss out on all that when you're just a cultural Christian. We make huge donations to different organizations locally, broadly, and we advertise that on our websites and in our mission statements so that the world knows, hey, quote unquote, we are good people because we support, organ donor activity or organization. We support animals' rights and so on, or environmental this and that, and we wear shirts, t-shirts, advertising and promoting the fact that, hey, yeah, these are the good things that we've done, the good works, but where are our hearts, And just due to the fact that I'm close to the people that I've had these conversations with, I know that in some cases the hearts are very dark, but on the outside, it looks like we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And so that's pretty much it. I don't want to make this episode too long, but yeah, it kind of struck a chord with me. So I want to thank the YouTube algo for getting that one teed up for me as the first thing that I saw on YouTube that day. And I also want to thank Mike Winger. He's been a big part of my Bible studies, my understanding, as I've mentioned before, I'm pretty new on this walk, and so I'm an amateur. There's a lot that I don't know, and it seems like I get the impression that dude has been digging in the weeds and sifting through the dirt to pull out the gems, which is a lot of work and has saved me, or has kept me from having to do that sort of stuff. Don't know much about him. I've only been following him for a few months and consuming his content for a few months, but you recognize wisdom when I hear it. So that's all for now. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, and God bless.